moving in. So I'll double check that that's not happening to her as well.
Okay, thank you.
So we have not heard from Gina. Luis is trying to track her down right now, and I've sent her a note as well.
Okay. I think, why don't we, if this is agreeable with everyone, we'll give a 10-minute courtesy and then we'll go ahead and start up.
Dan, so 10:50, is that when we resume?
No, I was thinking 10:40. That's the 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Oh, I think our clocks are off again. I don't know. I've got 10:39.
My computer says 10:39 and my phone does. Now my laptop at home would say 10:42. That's my city laptop. It's well over my head.
She's logging in now, so.
Oh, okay, thank you. Good. And just for everyone's information, tomorrow I will be driving. I will be taking this meeting from the car, so I will have my video off.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nobody wants to get road sick or car sick while watching the meeting. Thank you.
I was pretty sure that would be the case.
Karina, good homelessness task force meeting this morning, huh?
It was excellent. It was excellent. And I loved seeing the different people using their strengths already to match up and grow the existing efforts. And we even grew a future subcommittee. So that will be really exciting. So that our resources are being well utilized.
Who's on that committee now? I mean, because you had a couple that came in after we went through our process.
Yeah, well, Cindy Burleson was an alternate and she came in as permanent because we had a resignation from Randy Florence, who has resigned from the chamber due to health reasons, resigned as chamber CEO.
So I'm thinking, because we are being broadcast, we might. Excellent.
Great. And you're muted. And welcome, Councilmember Ernestine.
Thank you. I was even answering emails this morning. I have it on my calendar for Tuesday and Wednesday. I don't know why, but sorry.
Well, Gina, we're glad you're here. Okay. So let's get going. And who is going to run this meeting?
So I can jump right into it, or Todd, if you want to do an intro, it's up to you.
Please jump right in.
Okay. Good morning, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Welcome to our 22-23 budget presentation. Today is day one of our study sessions. I'm probably going to lose you at some point because I have too many screens open. But you have your packets and your agendas. We have a lot of information to get through today and a very optimistic schedule. So we have questions built into the presentation, but if at any time you want to stop us, feel free to do so. And please let me know if you need comfort breaks. We can stop for that as well. If I don't happen to see your hand up, someone holler out and I'll certainly stop for you so we can do that. Today's agenda, we're going to look at 21-22 updates, 22-23 goals and objectives, some of our summaries. We are going to get through 22-23 general fund budgets and forecasts. And also we're going to jump right into the Desert Willow budget today. And finally, some of our general fund operations budgets. So that is our plan. Some of the key dates coming up. Tomorrow is Public Works and the CIP budget. And then May 10th, we will jump into public safety and any follow-ups from the prior two meetings. And then on June 9th is our public hearing notice, and our actual budget presentation to you will be June 23rd. So I will move on to the next page. It should be on the right side here. I apologize. I need to close one of my screens. That's all that matters right now. So for 22-23, we took a look at the key goals and objectives, and this is what has driven the 22-23 general fund budget. these items we will go to in depth tomorrow during the CIP presentation. So if you have questions on the specific projects, we'll definitely be addressing those then. So I will jump into 21-22 estimations. We are looking at revenue at
Excuse me, do you mean to be sharing screen?
Yes, I do.
What's up?
It's on my screen, so I'm assuming you can see it. My apologies. Thank you for stopping me. That's why I was getting confused.
Yeah, I have it up on my screen, so I was just following along.
I appreciate it. That's a rookie move, by the way. So our 22-23 goals and priorities are what guided us through the general fund for 22-23. If we look backwards for 21-22, what we're estimating in revenue at year end is 68.5 million and expenditures at 62.09 million. So we are anticipating a surplus of about $6 million. What's not considered in that surplus is our ARPA payment that we anticipate receiving in May.
Excuse me,
June.
Veronica.
Yes.
You're still on the goals and priorities slide. So yeah,
I'm clicking the wrong one. So
there you go.
okay. So within this year-end estimate, we're anticipating receiving 6.4 surplus just in general revenues, and then the ARPA money is at 4.9. So with that, we anticipate about 11.4 million total in 21-22. This fund summary takes a look at what we're expecting for 22-23 overall in all the project funds, in all general fund, special revenue, and all the rest. We are looking at 128.6 in revenues.
Hey,
And
Veronica,
yes,
I'm sorry, before you leave 21-22,
yes, sir.
general fund surplus anticipated at this point is how much?
6.4 million.
Okay.
And I
Thank
have
you.
another slide coming up that shows that in depth. I apologize, it's on the forecast.
No, thank you.
You're welcome. So expenditures anticipated in 22-23 total 137.7. That's for all funds. Again, the CIP budget, we will go through that in depth tomorrow, but this is what it looks like currently. In year one, we're anticipating 28.6 million total. We have some carryovers of about 45.5. We are projecting about 40 million in projects that are unfunded. And later in the presentation, we will tell you what we are requesting or suggesting how to cover that $40 million. These are our grant summary that we're anticipating in the upcoming year. We got about $6 million that cover various funds that will help us with those projects that we anticipate for the year. So let's jump into the general fund. For 22-23, we are estimating $70.6 million in revenue and 70.8 in expenditures, with a deficit at the end of the year of about 178,000. This deficit doesn't anticipate any, reduction to revenue. This obviously is a growth in a tremendous growth in our revenue. What we're looking at here by showing this deficit is a proactive approach to covering any deferred maintenance cost and or meeting the goals that council has set for us this year. And so this is staff's proactive approach to reaching those goals in a year where we're anticipating substantial revenue growth. So when we look at our 5-year comparison budget to actual, the gray line represents what we've budgeted over the last 5 years. And you can clearly see the growth over the last 5 years, not just from the pandemic, but from the years preceding pandemic. The blue line shows our actual growth in revenue. The green line represents our expected, our budgeted expenditures that we anticipate. And as you can see in 22-23, they're right lined up. And then you have our actual expenditures that have occurred over the past 5 years in the brown. So this is our financial forecast that we are projecting over the next 5 years. Those are the numbers I was going through with you on the 21-22 fiscal year, with 6.4 expected as a surplus, 4.9 from the ARPA money that we should receive in the next couple of months, leaving about 11.4 that can be used for general fund purposes or can be deposited and reserved for other projects. As you see going out, we have the small deficit that we're identifying in 2022-23, and then some surpluses in the latter years. And then again, in 26-27, we're showing a slight deficit. And that's because what we factored in there was the fire station and the North Spirit Park coming on and having some, maintenance costs associated with those, or operations costs, I should say. These items at the bottom here, what we've identified, those are the $40 million in projects that we anticipate potentially could be used from the general fund. And so you see at the end of the day, it does draw down our reserve at year 26-27 to about $77 million. If there are no questions on this, I can move on to the next slide. So these are our projections. This is basically the visual representation of what I just showed you on the forecast. If you'll remember, in prior year, we had a second line that was trending on the general fund without ARPA money. And we've removed that this year because we've filed our report that was due April 30th and everything was approved. And so we do anticipate receiving the second tranche of that payment.
Veronica, what's that term you're using? ARPA money?
I apologize. The American Rescue Plan, that is the money that we received from the federal government. The city received just under $10 million. And originally it had very strict regimented rules of what you could use it for. We identified revenue loss as what we would show the reason why we need it. And now if an entitled city received less than $10 million, you just have to show that there was a need. And so once we showed there was a need, we were able to attribute those funds to public safety costs. And that's how we reported them on due April 30th.
And that's COVID relief funding?
Correct.
And so that's expected to stop at some point?
Correct. This payment that we receive in June, I think it's the end of May, beginning of June, will be our last payment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just one added question on that topic, is the other half reflected in the current year?
It is not, because it's not money that materializes until we receive it. So it is not considered in the current year.
Okay, so my real question is, we qualified for just under 10 million. What's shown here is just under 5 million. So where's the rest?
So the first payment was received in 2020, 2021. So that has already been taken into account.
Okay.
This second payment.
I just misguessed. I thought it might be this year, but it was the prior year. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the trends continue to grow, and that's what we're showing here. So let's jump into revenue. With the general fund revenue, these are our 5-year history and the breakdown of where those funds are coming. Sales tax continues to be our largest contributor, with TOT following closely behind. They seem to be trending together with their growth right now, which is exceptional. This is the breakdown of what you just saw. We are anticipating or projecting 25.1 million in sales tax next year. This is a conservative yet midline approach that we took. I had a couple meetings with our sales tax consultant just to keep asking them, are you sure? Are you really sure? And they were very comfortable with this number. I'm most comfortable with this number. We may see more than this number based on receipts that I've gotten in the last couple of days. But I'm very comfortable giving the 25 million to you today. The TOT is equally trending right along with sales tax. We see the effects here of our marketing approach, but also just the staycations that are occurring within the city. It's very optimistic, but also just when you look at our current trends, it fits right along with it. As far as property tax goes, we took a conservative approach there. Although we know that we have a lot of residential coming online, it takes about 12 to 18 months for the county to get those on the books. And also what we were looking at is in our recent disclosure statements, we saw a lot of successful appeals with larger entities. And so we just took a modest increase for 22-23 in property tax. For the rest of our estimates, we looked at actual projects, what we anticipate coming online for 22-23, and also prior year actuals to get those numbers.
Hey, Veronica, remind me on property tax, the base rate is 1%, and then there's some add-ons. Out of that 1%, what does the city receive?
I will have to look. I know it is, we're in a NOLO, and I want to say we've always said it's right around 3%, but I could be off. So let me look at that and get back to you.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
And one other quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the ambulance reimbursement reflected here, or is it reflected in separate budgeting for public safety?
I believe, Louise, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's reflected in a different fund. Let's see if he jumps in.
Ms. Chavez, I hope maybe the last question in the section where it says transfers. I don't know if I missed it in a different part where it asks for the different components. Is there a way to break that down? I see that that's a substantial number compared to a few of the other items listed. Thank you.
On the transfers in, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
We will.
And it wasn't the last question. I'm just wondering why we feel there will be a substantial decline in permits and fees.
So we reached out to building and safety on that. And I asked the same question because I was hoping to cover that little deficit with what we've been talking about. And one of the things they relayed to me is that what we've seen over the past year has been a growth in commercial permits. And next year will be residential, and residential permits are less expensive than a commercial would be.
Thank you.
And Ms. Kelly, or Councilman Kelly, that those fees are reported in the fire fund.
So if you guys have no additional questions, I'll move on. So this is just the visual on the three top revenue sources. Again, sales tax being the top revenue source, TOT second to that, and property tax right below that. This is our sales tax revenue breakdown. These are the entities that generate our sales tax. One of the lines that I included in there is our county pool. I didn't see it in there in prior years, but I thought it was important to note that that pool also continues to grow along with our brick and mortar sales tax.
So the county pool is the allocation algorithm for online sales, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
So this is a picture that we get from our sales tax consultant on a quarterly basis. And I thought it was important to include this. The blue line you see there is the trend of where they were projecting pre-pandemic. The gray bars that you see off to the right is where we're at now. So post-pandemic, we're not only meeting our pre-pandemic numbers, but they believe that we will surpass them at quite a depth from what they're showing us. This includes inflation, gas prices, overall just trends of growth and everything they could think of. But what they tell me is that their actuarial actually takes a very conservative approach to this. So I thought that was interesting, and I thought it was good to share with you guys. This is our TOT year over year, broken down by the type: large hotels, small and medium, and short-term rentals. The interesting part of the comparison, I guess, would be the fact that not only hotels are growing, but STRs show a growth between 2021 and 21-22. I know at some point I'm going to get tongue-tied throughout this thing, so there was one. This is our TOT comparison showing the hotels versus the STRs, and it reflects the growth in both of them year over year. So here's where we get to the good stuff. This is our estimated reserve. At the end of 21-22, we anticipate a fund balance of $103.6 million. Provided the rules of our reserve policy, we've broken that down, and this is what we're recommending to break it down for the current year. And results are a total committed reserve of $98.7 million, which leaves us about 4.89 in unallocated or unassigned reserve. This amount, however, I will let you know now, does not include the ARPA monies. So between the two, there's going to be a larger number that can be allocated. These numbers right here will be what these projects are competing for. Westfield optimization, North Sphere Regional Park, and the Development Services office space improvements were identified as the top priorities as far as projects go and potential use of the reserve. Ms. Kelly.
Oh, on the prior slide. We worked very hard, of course, to establish the parameters for each of these reserve funds. I just wanted a quick refresher. Is my memory correct that the general fund operating reserve is primarily needed for cash flow purposes?
It is, and the amount that we usually put is 25% of operations and transfers. It's intended for cash flow purposes. And where is there is another use of it, and I apologize, but yes, that is the primary reason.
Okay, and obviously we tapped the Economic Development Reserve heavily to assist our businesses during the pandemic. Did we literally tap all of it? Is that why we're showing zero here?
Yes. Yes.
So from a council perspective, if we want to position ourselves to be in a position to similarly respond in the event of another unforeseen circumstance, we have to be thinking about that. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The only other source of revenue for the economic development projects and programs would be the sales of the startup properties and the portion of the city's receivership of those funds, of the sale of the proceeds.
Just on that slide still, to your last point, my recollection is though that the council has authority to reallocate or to transfer between the individual components. My question, and I see you nodding, so my understanding I assume is correct, but my question is, it occurs to me that even at 1%, the interest earnings would be like $1 million a year. Where do the interest earnings go? Back to the respective funds, including in the case of the general fund operating reserve? Do we get that interest?
Yes. I can see Mr. Espinoza shaking his head yes, so I can answer confidently.
All right, thank you, Louise. Thank you.
So if there are no further questions, I can move on. Okay. Luis corrected me on the city's portion of the 1%. I believe it was Miss Kelly that had asked. It's 7%. Okay. So these are the items
That's
that we will
the real estate tax.
yes, property tax, correct. Yes.
Property tax.
And it's 7% of 1%. So it's teeny
It is.
in a nutshell.
But it adds up.
It does. Okay, so what we were saying is these are the items that are competing for those reserve monies, and those were listed at the bottom of that worksheet as far as how they would filter through each fiscal year. We will discuss these again in more depth tomorrow, so you guys can look at those. So now we'll look at the expenditures overall. These are the expenditures by category. As you can see, the items highlighted in bold, or I should say the items bolded, are the items where we have seen the most growth from year to year as far as the projected budgets go. We will get into those individual budgets with the team later on today, and they will be letting you know what items are one-time expenditures that they're anticipating and which ones are just normal growth from what we're seeing out there in RFPs and bids right now. This is the visual representation. 30% obviously represents police services, with 17% attributable to salaries, and 12% is benefits, 11% is professional services, and transfer out to other funds. And if you will recall, sorry, Savvy?
Well, I'm just curious, the transfers out include the transfer to fire. And I always like to see what are we spending on, public safety, and police is very clear about 21 million. Is there a later slide where we see what we're trying? Okay.
We'll go into depth on day 3. It's about, I think it was about 17 million, if I recall correctly, but the general fund spends about 4.6.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If there are no further questions on this slide, I can move on to the next one. These are the anticipated expenditures by department. Again, staff will go into each one of these departments after the Desert Willow presentation today and identify where the growth is happening this year. This is the visual representation of that list. We've got 30% obviously in police services, 11% is transfers out, and 10% is general services. And I will just remind you the reason why that one is so large is because that's where we put the PERS payment annually that goes out. So are there any questions at this point, or additional, I should say? And are we ready to jump into Desert Willow? Clay, can we elevate Derek and his team? I guess I should make it to where I can see everybody. Next slide. There's Derek. So this is the overview for the Desert Willow budget. I see Derek is elevated. Derek, do you want to jump into that one?
Yeah, sure. So this kind of represents what we've best guess budgeted for fiscal year 2023. A couple highlights for fiscal year 2023 would be that the Firecliff renovation will impact our revenue generation for FY 2023 should that project continue to move forward. It is estimated that we will close Firecliff starting right around June 1st. It could be a little earlier, probably not any later. And we do estimate that that will cost us some revenue generation for FY 2023. In general, I think you see some of the numbers here. Payroll, they're broken down between entities without a total there, but around $6.8 million in payroll. And then other operating expenses, they've broken out the Learning Center here for you. There's some professional services, which I think is the management fee. Fleet and lease payments, those will be some payments that will have to be made by us. Depreciation, amortization, some capital projects that will be there, and then of course the cost of goods sold by entity there. And then it looks like the estimated revenue for FY 2023 is listed by entity at the bottom. So we will be moving from what previously in 2019 was total revenues of 11.6 to the tune of closer to 13.8 or almost $14 million in FY, or we'll be over 14 probably in FY 2022. And then we're budgeting just below 14 in 2023 with the revenue loss from the large renovation. Any particular questions?
So this schedule that we have now is one that Todd asked us to put together a 5-year projection for you. It breaks out all of the revenues and expenditures by category, gives you the net surplus deficit at the year end that we anticipate. And then also at the bottom, what we are trying to do here is capture the reserve analysis for Desert Willow. What we're looking at are on the top line at the bottom. Can you see my cursor? Is about 3.8 at the end of 21-22. 180 days operation reserve is about 5.5 million. 90 days is about 2.7. So we sit right in between those two right now. As time goes on, that picture gets a little bit better. But what that takes into consideration is that up here in revenues, this bolded line, transfer in from general fund, it shows that there's no transfer from the general fund during these years, but that there is a transfer in from capital reserve to cover the capital costs. And what that tells us is that any fluctuation or reduction in revenue potentially could result in a general fund transfer in, which would it would either reduce what they have at the end of the year for the reserve, or it would keep it at what we're projecting, but the general fund would be covering it. I believe those are the highlights that I wanted to hit on this. What we don't reflect in this model is any downtime for Desert Surf, because that was a really hard one to put our finger on in any one of these given years, but we do know that potentially there could be that affecting it. I think that was it. Todd, do you have anything you want to add on this slide?
Yeah, I think that we've got the council and I receive questions from time to time about altering the green fee revenue, and what I really thought was important here is just to show the sensitivity. One of the nice things at Desert Willow right now is that the capital is being funded very close. It's closely aligned with the amenity fee, which is nice. It means that other than special projects, Desert Willow is able to handle. But the inflationary costs, its expenses are there. They're covered by the total revenues. But I think what's important and something that we need to understand is if anything disrupts Desert Willow, that's why you have that cash reserve at the bottom. Most businesses will operate on a 3 to 6 month cash perspective, where their revenue could be potentially this volatile. And that was really a good indication or a good indicator for where we should be managing cash flow at Desert Willow. So anything that we do to alter the revenue at Desert Willow, we either have to significantly cut back costs or transfer in from the general fund. I've had questions from a couple of you recently about the Indian Wells approach, and one of the differences with Indian Wells is they have no parks in the city, and they make a conscious effort of transferring in basically money from the general fund into the golf course every time a resident plays around there to recognize the subsidy that's going on. And as you can see, that has not been our approach. Desert Willow stands on its own. And I think that what we've been trying to do is put together a simple overview, not an audit visual, but a budget visual of what that means and the sensitivities to Desert Willow. And I think this accomplishes that. So you've got capital handled, operating expenses handled, any debt out there handled, as well as kind of how we're managing cash flow. But all those components are important they all work together in conjunction with one another and in conjunction with the economy out there. So I'm hoping this is simple to follow, and it allows us to talk with you about more policy-oriented discussions very simply, because if we move one issue, then one revenue stream or one expenditure stream, it bumps into another. And we were looking for a simple way to talk to you about it. And I'm hoping this accomplishes that.
Like Gina has a question.
Yes. Hi, Todd. Thanks for that clear and concise information that you presented. And as all of us council members know, we do get several contacts from our resident golfers, questioning why Indian Wells is doing all these wonderful things. And, that's a good point you underscore, that we have, the few regional parks. And so we have other expenses that the city of Indian Wells does not have. So Thank you for that.
Sabby, I think, has a question.
I do. A question and an observation. Let me do the question first. And let's focus on the 23-24 column just for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the cash reserve, it's at 5.5 million, and the next year it's like at 5.8 million. So it's gone up by the $300,000 surplus. But shouldn't it also reflect the transfer in from the reserve of 2.2 million? In other words, if we're actually subsidizing operations with 2.2 million, isn't that coming out of the reserve, and shouldn't the reserve go down by that amount?
Are you talking about the CIP, the 2.2 from CIP?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the top portion, the revenue portion. We're transferring in from the reserve 2.2 million. Why doesn't the reserve go down by that amount?
That's a separate reserve fund. That's the 441 fund that we keep here at the city. It's the capital reserve. So it is intended just for capital.
Well, I guess
it's separate from that cash reserve you're seeing at the bottom.
And the reserve you're referring to, Veronica, is that just specifically for Desert Willow, or are we?
It is, yes. It is from the amenity fees, and it is used to cover CIP at Desert Willow.
Okay, gotcha. And the other observation that I would have is,
Abby, if I may, before you move from there, because I'd like to touch on something. Would that on this spreadsheet warrant an asterisk and a footnote? Perhaps, because if Sally has a question, I'm sure he's not alone, but just a thought.
Certainly could. It certainly could. And I think to further answer, Sabby, that was one of the really smart decisions that the previous councils have made, is that amenity fee is essentially paid into a separate fund that funds the major, it's a savings account essentially to fund the major debt instead of debt service at Desert Willow, to fund those major capital improvements. And one of the things that we did this year was bring it up and put it on the sheet so you could see it, because it basically is put in and out. But the reason that was so smart is clearly there's not enough expenditure or revenue to offset capital projects. So by segregating that, you have a sinking fund to handle most of the projects out at Desert Willow, protecting a general fund transfer. And it was just trying to show the council, being as transparent as we can, how this all works, rather than jumping around fund to fund.
yeah, and to that point, and that's the observation I wanted to make, Todd. I think this presentation format is an improvement, but I have a suggestion. If somebody just takes a cursory look, it looks like, oh, there's 6, and I'm still just staying with 23-24.
Okay.
A cursory look would say, oh, revenue of 16.3, expenditures of 16, they're making money. They're 300,000 ahead. So a suggestion would be to take that in the revenue section, the transfers, and remove it from the revenue. It's not really operational revenue. So that the revenue in that year would be 14 million, the expenses would be 16 million, have a deficit line of 2 million, and then show that transfer in from capital of 2 million.
Sure.
And that, yeah, in my mind, that makes it really clear that we have a deficit when we take into consideration the long-term replacements, the capital improvements. We have a deficit, and we're actually subsidizing that out of a reserve.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a point well taken. It's exactly what's happening. So
yeah, thank you.
Karina, I think you have a question.
I do. First part of my question is just to echo Mayor Pro Tem as far as how is that applied there and how can it be moved over? Because my concern is, can we clarify that? I think you said the 441 fund, how long will that continue to generate? Is that something that will replenish little by little? Is there a time in which it's done, it's capped, and we need to find somewhere else to fund? So thank you.
That amenity fee is basically collected from the timeshares and residents out on Desert Willow. So it will go on as long as those agreements are in place. I think to your point, which is a good one, it will continue losing buying power over time. You're paying it in at today's dollars. Some of those early deals were very generous, and it's not getting any cheaper to do the golf course improvements. So the buying power over time is not going to keep up with the course renovations. And I think the other important thing when we're looking at the other question that may come up is, why are you managing your reserves closer to the 180-day policy numbers right now? And the simple answer to that is, when Desert Surf comes in, we'd ask Derek to put a budget together that was a kind of a status quo budget that still was aggressive on the CIP, because obviously we need to keep Desert Willow as a world-class facility. Once we have a better timeline on Desert Surf and how that might impact traffic into Desert Willow, we can come back in and refine it. But we don't have good enough information yet on when that might happen and the timing of it. Once that does happen, we're going to have to come back to you with a revised budget format at some point, because there will be some impacts on Desert Willow, parking constraints, that sort of thing. But we wanted to be sure that we had better information, and that's why you carry reserves. Anytime you take a course out of a line, anytime that the market starts falling or it's impacted by external factors such as Desert Surf, it will hit Desert Willow's bottom line.
Todd, is there a plan for that? And we can maybe get into the Desert Willow President's Committee, but are there alternatives? For example, a different access point during construction, something to ameliorate the negative impacts from construction at Desert Surf?
Those conversations are ongoing. We do have a team that's working on that right now, but honestly, it just depends on how they're structuring construction, and how they're layering it in, when the contracts are coming. We don't have a good enough plan from them right now to answer your question with a straight face. So we need their plan and their information to be in better shape, so we can make a better recommendation to you.
So on this worksheet itself, Todd has asked us to update it quarterly to you. Staff will work with Desert Willow staff to make sure that we get that out to you. Definitely making notes and making some adjustments so that you can see what it looks like updated quarterly. So if there are no additional Desert Willow questions, we can either take a break or power through the next section. You guys let me know. Is everyone feeling okay? Keep on going.
Any thoughts on that? Okay, it looks like we thumbs up I see from Gina. Let's keep going.
Fantastic. So one of the things, along with aligning the general fund budget projections this year with the council's goals, Todd has also looked at staffing and how they're lined up with the goals. And so we've had a recent reorganization. This is our current organization chart. The idea behind it was to develop the departments and design them to deliver on council's goals and the community points of interest. Todd, do you want to expand on that concept in any way, or you're good?
No, I think you've done a good job.
Okay. So now we're broken down into 6 different departments: economic development, CMO's office, which includes IT, HR, public affairs, innovation. And then we have the finance department, of course, with accounting and purchasing. We'll go into that later. Budget, and of course, Desert Willow. Development services now has housing, planning, code, compliance, building, and the permit center. The ACM is now over the Public Works Department and also taking on police and fire, environmental, and AIPP. And then we also have the City Clerk's Department. So the FTEs, when we look at it year over year, in 21-22, our original budget had 107 employees identified as FTEs. I believe in December, they came back and adjusted that to 112. We are currently sitting at 112 with 7 positions that are currently vacant. They may or may not be filled in the 22-23 fiscal year, depending on what those needs result over the next year. Some of the numbers are there are variations from year to year just because of the different reorganizations we've experienced over the past couple of years. But those are the highlights on this page. Before we get into the next few department pages, I just wanted to kind of point out, when you look at the pages, department budgets that are part of the general fund will be in green, and then department budgets that are in black are from our special funds, and they have distinct restricted funds, but they are there for the programmatic discussion for you. So if there are no questions, we'll jump right in. We have the city manager's office, and Clay, if you could elevate Heather for me, that would be wonderful.
Good morning, Heather Horning, assistant to the city manager here. The city manager's office, I'm sure as you're all aware, has really focused last year and this year on restructuring the organization and focusing on organizational culture and innovation. That'll continue to be a focus in this next upcoming year. That means looking at processes, procedures, establishing new tracking and reporting methods, and of course, new technology. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. For the budget, we have our salaries, benefits, kind of the normal things under the city manager's office, no big changes there. We have community safety, which includes all of our community services, which includes the homeless outreach team, our partnership with CVAG for their CV Housing First, the citizens on patrol, and the school crossing guards in that account, and then legislative advocacy, which is our lobbyists there. No major changes on these slides. That's why nothing's highlighted. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
If there are no questions, we will move on to the Human Resources Division. Clay, could you please elevate Andrea?
Hello and good morning, Mayor and honorable council members. My name is Andrea Staley, and I'm the city's Human Resources Manager. So as you can read, our 2021-2022 successes within Human Resources are really focused on recruitment, professional development, and workplace culture. The implementation of that recruitment schedule has streamlined the recruitment process, and has allowed us to manage that large recruitment, as you can see. And the new hire and orientation ambassador program has brought current and new employees together, which has been really exciting to watch and see. For the 2022-2023 year, HR plans to continue to focus on employee professional development, recruitment efforts in our current market, using technology to streamline processes, and continuing to create a positive, appreciative, and productive working environment for both our current and new employees. So these goals, if you want to go to the next slide, are reflective in our budget by establishing our Palm Desert University, implementing an electronic system for orientation evaluations, and using other advertising opportunities such as LinkedIn to post employment opportunities. So that's where our focus is for next year and is reflected in our budget. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Seeing no questions, we'll move on to the next section. Clay, could you elevate Clay on health?
Elevated. Good afternoon or good morning. What you see is a result of a continued modernization effort within the IT over the last several years, our IT investments. One main change that we have coming up for next fiscal year, we're going to be focusing on GIS and cybersecurity as our two main areas of investment. Over the last few years, we have seen IT spend move from an OpEx, an operational expense, over to a capital expense. And that is also one of the reasons you'll see a significant line change in one of our in our accounts. Veronica and I worked together and we decided that it would represent the story better by creating a new account number just for IT license, software licensing, since that is now something that is an ongoing annual maintenance, no longer just something that you buy and you have forever. So that's reflected in our accounts. Our department successes, you can see we have, those are all results of different initiatives that we have had in the past. Our migration to O365 and Laserfish public portal are some of our big successes. But yeah, go ahead and go to the next slide. So our next fiscal year, we're looking to make a major investment in GIS. We have made significant investments in the past in GIS and have created a robust toolbox. And this next fiscal year, we will be looking to spend on training and staff support so that staff are able to use all those tools to their full capabilities. This is not only just communications or staff reports, but this is community engagement. This is using GIS for budgeting and analysis tools. Really powerful, really excited about where that will go in the future. And then our other main investment is cybersecurity. We had an independent third party come and do a cybersecurity review last fiscal year. And we had an implementation plan for hardening our cybersecurity, increasing it for the city. With all of the events in the Ukraine, we have fast-tracked a lot of those projects. So we are actually spending some now. You'll see you have already approved in some of the previous council meetings, and there are more coming up for some pretty significant cybersecurity spends, but we will also be doing that in the next fiscal year as well. And then our last area of emphasis is working with finance to increase and streamline the functionality of our ERP system. Some of our one-time purchases, we're looking at a very robust cloud disaster recovery solution for the city that will allow us to have business continuity no matter what happens. That's our goal. That's what we're heading for. We're also going to have a enterprise asset management system for public works. This will be heavily GIS integrated and will really fill out our GIS and ERP portfolio for them. And then a few other spins for next fiscal year. So happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, we will go on.
I do have a quick question. I wanted to ask in terms of the, oh man, I lost my question. So sorry about that, but great work on the outline and updating the cybersecurity. That is a giant need. So thank you very much, Clay.
We can always come back, Karina, if you need to. Okay, we'll move on to public affairs. Clay, if you could cue up Thomas Soul. There it is.
Good morning. I'm Thomas Soul, your public affairs manager. And over the past year. Some of the successes my department has had have been focused on communications efforts, of course. We've done a lot of work on the website, including the homepage, but also pages behind that. So I hope you've been able to take a look at that and see it's looking better and better all the time. We've also launched Engage Palm Desert, which has been a wonderful tool for communicating with the public. We reopened the visitor center and welcomed a lot of visitors back to City Hall after being closed for a while, and we've returned to events, including concerts in the park, and looking forward to 4th of July coming up. Our major initiatives for the coming fiscal year include a lot of 50th anniversary planning and beginning of executing of those plans. We're going to continue to expand our communications infrastructure, and that includes email newsletters that we're looking at. We're redesigning Brightside, and we want to establish a digital version of that to make it easier and more timely to send out. We're going to expand our local advertising to support different public affairs things. We've had different things around the city that we'd like to get word out about, and we're looking for as many touch points as we can to reach residents and businesses in Palm Desert so that they can find out everything that's happening here. And then cost containment measures. A lot of what we're doing is trying to get information to residents before they feel the need to pick up the phone and call City Hall. And so that has been a very cost-effective way to use our resources and really get good information out to the community. And in terms of one-time expenses that are coming up, some of them are due to increased costs due to supply chain issues, including printing of the Brightside, things like that. But also you'll see under professional other, we're suggesting some funds to be put towards translation of documents at City Hall that go out to residents so that it's available to them in their language. I don't think we've had money specifically set aside for that before. So that's something we're making intentional and asking for some budget to go behind that. We'd also like to do some brand research for, it's been, our advertising campaign has been in market for several years now. And as we emerge from COVID, we just want to check in with the drive market and make sure that our campaign is still resonating and it's effective. It seems to be working well. We just wanted to make sure. So I put some money in there for brand research. In terms of advertising media buys, there's an increase there that relates to the local advertising that I mentioned. For special events, there's an increase there for 50th anniversary elements. We'll be coming back next year with a different request, but specifically relating to that year. And then I wanted to draw your attention to advertising special co-ops. This is the program that we use with the hotel, primarily the JW Marriott, helping them attract group business to their hotel. We offer funds to help them buy down the rate so that it's a more attractive option for groups where they might be competing with other destinations that maybe are a little cheaper or easier to reach, so that we can help maximize that important TOT source of revenue for the city. So in the budget, you'll see there's $79,000, a little over $79,000 for existing commitments. So those are programs that are supposed to be coming to the city during this next fiscal year. We've already committed those funds to help draw those groups here. And then there's an additional $50,000 for any potential groups that might come in the year for the year. So they would, sometimes at the last minute, a group will want to change and we need to add an incentive. So the extra $50,000 is to help give us some flexibility during that. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Sorry about that. Before we move on to community promotions, one of the things Todd asked us to take a look at was streamlining the community promotions budget. So the budget that you're going to be presented right now is strictly city produced events and the courtesy cards, of course. And any city sponsored events where we're just funding the event is included in our contributions budget. And we'll get into that later in the presentation. So with that, Clay, could you elevate Vanessa?
Can I interrupt for a quick second or, oh, never mind. Sorry, let's finish up public affairs. I did remember my question. My apologies.
Okay, we'll come back. Or maybe while we're waiting for Vanessa. Oh, there she is.
Good morning. As you can see, there is an increase that we are looking at between 2021 to 2023. Most of this is going to be because we either had events that were canceled due to COVID that will be coming back, as well as virtual events that will now go back to being in person. We also have added additional funds under miscellaneous events. Should we need to be doing some grand openings for President's Plaza or the Lupin Plaza, if that comes to fruition next year. And then, of course, we've also added an additional funds there for another block party. We do know that council and the community enjoyed the last one that we did. So we've put that money there aside in case that's something that council would like to continue to move forward with. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Seeing no questions. Karina, you want to go back to yours?
Yes, and it all kind of ties into this. My question goes back to Clay. You mentioned the GIS, so I'm always curious how the geospatial data is utilized. Is that only for IT? What other departments, and how can this information be used to grow how we operate the city and maximize our funds? Thank you.
Yeah, great. Our GIS, so the way it's structured, our IT organization handles the GIS data. So we are the keepers of the data. And in the past, we have been the ones that would generate the maps. And that's one of our pushes this next year, is to get the tools that you can create your own maps, your own web apps, your own whatever you want to do with GIS into the hands of the individual staff members. And they are able to use those tools themselves. They've become very simple to use, very easy to create your own web app, a smartphone app, whatever you might need. And the staff members themselves will be able to use those tools and push them out. And IT will really be more just the holder of the data, making sure that the geospatial data is secure and update and correct. And staff themselves, all the departments will be the ones to actually consume and use and push out these maps.
That is very exciting, and I can't wait to see how it's applied. I'm sure that it all could tie back into our city app, so always got to throw the plug in for that. But thank you so much, Clay. I greatly appreciate that info.
Clay, on that note, if I may, SCAD has developed the regional data platform too and I hope you're using that. And I'm not sure, you had talked about training the staff, and there may be programs there that could help us with that. So I'll follow up and let you know, but that may be an asset for the city.
Yeah, we have made contact with them and are in conversation with them about their data platform. We're really excited about that as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
So that concludes the presentation by the city manager's office. If there is nothing else, we can move on to the city clerk's office if you'd like. Clay, can you please elevate Anthony?
Good morning, everyone. So excited to share with you our department successes. We're in collaboration with the IT department launching the Laserfish public portal. And just so you know, we are working on some improvements to help with the navigation of finding documents, and that should be launched within the next month. And then we are launching PrimeGov to standardize our agenda management processes across City Council and then all of the commissions and committees as well. Our initiatives for the next year are to implement a new Public Records Act portal and a statement of economic interest filing system. So that will improve the filings of both of those kinds of processes. Then we are going to be working on the general municipal election, including the potential ballot measure, and then creating an educational campaign regarding ranked choice voting. And then we will also be looking at creating an onboarding and regular training program for our our commissions and committees, as well as for our staff liaisons. And then because of the technology improvements over the last year and upcoming, we are able to reduce our staffing by 1 FTE through attrition as part of our cost containment measures. And then largely it's the same budget as last year, with a major exception related to the elections and the need to purchase software and implement ranked choice voting.
Mrs. Kelly.
Yes, thank you. At our most recent council meeting, we approved the notion of a separate allocation for each council member for seats at events where the city is not procuring a table. Is that built into the conference meeting and mileage number here, or is that built in someplace else?
I'll let Heather jump in here.
Yes, hi. It is not included in the conference meeting mileage budget. That is truly meant for conferences that you'd be attending outside of the city, and then for those local meetings as is defined in the policy. The individual tickets will be part of the contributions budget, and there is a line item for those later on in the presentation.
Okay, I didn't see it, so we'll make sure we figure that out when we get there. Thank you.
We saved the best for last on that one. So, if there are no other questions for Anthony, we are about to jump into development services. Do you all need a comfort break, or do you want to keep powering through?
I'm good for now. I'm just going on video occasionally to stretch. So I'll let you know when more is needed from me, at least.
Sounds good.
Same here.
Perfect, thank you. So we'll turn it over to Martine now.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the City Council. Can you hear me? Okay, sounds good. Thank you. As Ms. Chavez indicated, our development services, my name is Martine Alvarez. I'm the Director of Development Services, for those of you who are on camera from the outside. Our development services department consists of planning, land development. We have our building and code departments or divisions, our permit center, and housing. So we're going to go through and highlight some of the department successes from each of the divisions, and then some of the major initiatives, of course, for 22 and 23 fiscal year. From the planning and land development, as you've seen and have heard us talk about housing. Entitlements of over 700 units have occurred primarily in our North Palm Desert area. We've been very busy over the last year with implementing the dining deck programs and guidelines, in which have been successful for our businesses and restaurants. We've completed the Lupine Plaza design, or at least conceptual design, and that's going to be moving forward into next fiscal year for construction drawings. And then the large project, of course, that was approved last fiscal year was the Desert Surf project, which includes 92-room hotel, 88 villas, and a 5-acre surf lagoon and surf center. And if I could just provide you a quick update on that project, at least from the permitting side, they have submitted and have gone through a first 2 rounds of plan check. That is for the hotel, surf center, and the lagoon. So they are making progress. We anticipate that the plan checking, including the grading, will be complete by this summer. And we hope to have an answer as to their schedule for construction at that same time, by the end of the summer timeframe. So just to give you some background on that. Major initiatives, you'll hear this probably across all divisions. We are continuing to cross-train across all of our divisions so that we have ample backup and cross-training to support all of the different areas that we serve. We are going to be, of course, helping the economic development and working with our economic development department to come up with concepts and ideas of how to move the renovation of the Palm Desert, the shops at Palm Desert, which is obviously our mall site. We again will be looking at areas across all divisions to improve efficiency, look at process, how we can improve, streamline, and that's going to be a major initiative for us for this next fiscal year. And then we're also working to update the ARC bylaws in the coming fiscal year. So at any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I will move through these slides quickly. Yeah.
Thank you. Since you offered on that previous slide, yeah, the top line entitled 700 plus housing units. I'm going to assume that's mostly, if not entirely, in the North Sphere. a few years ago, if we can use that as a baseline, there were somewhere around, I'm going to recollect 3,500 residential units that were expected to go up, whatever that number is. Can we get an update from your department saying out of that baseline, essentially pre-construction, pre-development, how many have actually been built? How many are under construction? How many have received entitlement but not gone into construction? How many we just haven't heard from? I know that question has been asked and there's been numbers bounced around, but I'd really like to just see a summary of where we are with the North Sphere residential construction. Would that be possible?
Absolutely. And the number that we throw out here is just the last entitlements. You're absolutely right. There's been previous entitlements. There's current entitlements that are going on now. And we do have that information. We can provide that to the entire council.
Awesome. Thank you.
I have a quick question on that same slide, if I can trouble you back, Ms. Veronica. One of the initiatives is to revise the ARC bylaws. Can you provide some insight as to what those may be, since there's a lot that happens in that commission or committee? Thanks.
Absolutely. We're looking at ways to make sure that we have the balance in the actual membership that we have to fulfill the needs of reviewing our architectural review projects. We are also going to be updating, some of the current sort of processes and then sort of things that we can standardize what ARC should be tackling in terms of their role. We want to make sure that they're giving the development community the opportunity to review specifics. They review architectural, they review landscape, they review some site planning, but it's never really been identified in writing. And so when we say update the ARC bylaws, actually there are no bylaws at the time. So it's going to be a whole new set of information for the committee and also for our development community.
Thank you.
So if we turn into our planning and land development budget, you'll see that there's a significant change. A change from prior year, but what we've done, we've broken out some of the divisions into separate budgets, and you'll see here in the coming slides that we took out permit center on its own. We've consolidated planning and code, and so we have planning here on its own sort of budget. The one item that we can turn to that is professional services, $325,000. We do have a contract with an outside agency to review all of our grading, our land development maps, our tentative maps. And so that is our professional services that we use. Also, they provide our city engineer services for our land development division. So, and that is a cost recovery that we take in as projects get submitted. And so there is a cost recovery in that regard. So that's sort of the major line item you see there. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on this budget as well. And if there are no other questions here, we can move on. So our building safety and code compliance divisions have merged. This was an effort that we took in place to make sure that we have additional continuity in service, that we have additional backup and cross training, so that our building inspectors, our code compliance officers can learn from each other and can provide support to the entire division. There is continued development for the staff. That's a department success that we were implemented. One of the items that we're happy to share with the City Council is that we implemented a virtual inspection program and 800 plus inspections since last September. And those are inspections that have been done for air conditioning systems, other smaller water heater replacements, things of that nature that can really save time and energy from both ends, from the consumer side and also from our inspection side. And a total of almost 14,000 inspections were taking place last fiscal year by our inspectors. We recently launched the GoGov software for our code compliance division. Its efficiency has been improved with that software, and we're definitely improving the way that we communicate with our residents and business owners when it comes to compliance in the public. Our code compliance division was successful in working with the property owner of the McGowan's site. That was a building that needed to be demolished or deconstructed. So that was something that assisted in the improvement of the visual improvements to that site. Again, you'll see the cross-training as a kind of division-wide initiative, and we're going to continue to expand the virtual inspection program to assist our development community and also our residents that actually use it as well. The virtual inspection program, from a cost containment standpoint, has reduced over 400 hours of field hours. So this has allowed us, our inspectors, to utilize this time in other areas throughout the community. Here again, we'll point out the sort of the bigger line item, professional services, $351,000. We have a contract with a third party, HR Green, that does a lot of the large plan check services for us. And so again, that is a cost recovery. As projects like Desert Surf come aboard, submit their plans, we use a third party contractor to help us through that process. And so that again helps us to provide better service to our community in general. So there's no real major changes here. Just wanted to make sure I point that out. Okay. And then our code compliance division, again, I'll point out a couple of professional services line items there in $207,000, and then $336,000 for animal regulation. These are two, again, contract services that we have. The professional services line item is really meant to have the ability for our code compliance division to help with property cleanups, assist with the homeless cleanup situations when they arise. And of course, our animal regulation contract is with Riverside County. And there are no major changes in those areas for next fiscal year.
Just a quick note on Martine's budget in development services last year. A lot of the different divisions were rolled up into planning and administration. And this year, Todd asked us to separate them out so we could have true cost control centers for each division. And so you'll see code and permit center broken out from where they were at previously.
Thanks, Veronica, for that. And then our permit center, again, this was launched last fiscal year. We've issued over 4,000 permits. And one of the things we're very happy to announce and to share with the council as well was the launching of eTrack-It. This is an online portal that allows residents or even contractors to submit their plans electronically and to pull permits electronically. And to date, we've launched it with some permits such as air conditioning units, re-roofing, pools, other small projects that are easy to kind of maneuver and to plan check on the spot. And our goal is to make sure that we expand that program, that we continue to grow the amount and the types of permits that can be submitted electronically through the e-portal, electronic portal. And again, we're happy to announce, that our customer serving ratings are high, very successful. We've implemented customer service training for our permit technicians, and we're going to continue to make that an emphasis for all of our divisions as we move forward. Again, we're going to continue to make sure that we're improving our process, identifying ways to streamline things to get permits in and to get permits out. So any questions on that? I guess we can move on to the next one, which again, as Ms. Chavez indicated, we've broken out the different division budgets to give you a more clearer picture of what's happening in these different divisions. There are no major changes, I guess, to this division. So the last division we have is our housing. I'm going to ask that Ms. Gonzalez be elevated, and she can walk us through some of the department successes and initiatives for next fiscal year.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. before you, you have our housing division successes. We were busy in the current fiscal year trying to secure 2 different projects, a couple of different projects, but primarily 2 with regards to affordable housing development. And that included not just securing the transaction, but also some feasibility studies for financial assistance. And of course, the Surplus Land Act process that we also need to comply with. We were successful in also working jointly with our planning division to complete our housing elements cycle update, and with our public works department also jointly working to complete 4 capital improvement projects at our properties. And mostly they were roof projects that we have had a need to complete in the last year. So we were happy to be able to get a number of roofs completed and repaired. Can we go to the next slide?
Before you
Yes.
do that, Jessica, quick question.
Yes.
That 3rd bullet point, the 14 vacant lots on Merle off of Cook Street, can we expect to see construction on those at any time soon? And if not, do we have a clawback provision that says, okay, we get the lots back and let somebody else go at it?
We actually do. We just met with with Coachella Valley Housing Coalition with regards to their status. They are trying to secure a number of the subcontractors to move forward on the construction, and they are required based on the timeline to start construction in September. So I'm looking for a status at this time, but we do have that provision as part of the DDA that we have with them, that in the event they're not meeting the timeline and the construction, that we can actually claw back the properties.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. I will first go to the cost containment measures that we successfully reached for 21-22. Was our, as you know, with COVID, there was a lot of residents that were facing non-payment of rent, and we were able to join with Lift to Rise and secure approximately $284,000 in emergency rental assistance. As a landlord, we did not have to initially start that process. However, we were proactive and worked through that with Lift to Rise and our residents. We really don't know the true number, won't know that until after June, because there was an opportunity of additional funding that Lift to Rise received, and our residents were able to submit a second application for additional assistance. So the applications some are still in the process, and we won't know that until after June if they were successfully able to secure additional assistance. But we were successful at this moment in time to reach $284,000 in assistance to our residents on that. And we hope to continue to look for other assistance as we move forward for residents to have. Major initiatives that we're looking at as part of our proposed 22-23 budget for our housing authority is to secure some kind of decision from the state with regards to the housing authority asset properties to develop what we referred to previously as Arc Village and our Sagecrest development projects for affordable housing, 100% units there. Once we have a green light from the state on our process with respect to the Surplus Land Act and the housing asset itself, we will move forward on that and probably put solicitations for those projects to be developed in the future. We also have a couple of capital improvement projects that we are working with Public Works jointly. One is our One Quail Place asphalt replacement, and we are also looking at House Palms apartments. It's a wood trellis replacement. We do have a few other projects, but they are smaller in scope, such as our neighbor's entry driveway and a couple others, but they are covered. If you could go to the next slide, Veronica, sorry. They are covered under our replacement expenditure capital projects, which is listed here in our summary. That we have set aside $2.3 million for some of those projects, but those also cover any replacements on appliances at our properties. Just taking a look here, this is a summary for the Housing Authority. As noted on the bottom, operations and program costs are intended to be self-sustaining and covered by positive net operating income from rents of the properties. And we're estimating for 22-23 to be 8 million approximately. And separately, the replacement expenditures are currently covered by a reserve account. With respect to that, a couple years ago, we did a 30-year replacement plan. And every year we look at that as being what was estimated to be budgeted for the year to be used for replacements and projects that need to be completed. And that is for the upcoming year, the amount that was budgeted for. And we're looking at, as I mentioned, the asphalt project at our One Quill Place, the Desert Point entryway, and also the Taos Palms trellis to cover that, as well as the appliance replacements. I'd be happy to answer any questions or details with regards to the Housing Authority budget.
One of the things that I'll just note really quickly, Jessica mentioned that the replacement expense capital projects fund, that $2.3 million comes from our reserve. That is a finite number that we have deposited for that. We have money that we received from SARTA. I believe it's about $11 million still that is used to cover those costs. And then we also have bond funds that we can use for those costs. But when those are tapped out, there's no longer a revenue stream that supports those costs. At that point, we have to look at positive NOI. And the positive NOI on the Housing Authority complexes already reimburses the admin costs and any of the program fees. So there's going to be a hard look at some time that council has to look at to see how we cover those costs in the future. Sorry, that was the Debbie Downer portion of this presentation.
That was actually going to be my next question, so thank you.
We appreciate the check-in with reality. Thank you.
So if there are no further questions, we can move on to economic development. If we could elevate Eric Seha.
Yes, hi, Mayor and members of the City Council. Eric Seha, Director for Economic Development here at the city.
Mayor, and I'm sorry to interrupt, Eric, my apologies. If we can just take at some point, either before or after economic development, maybe a 10, 15-minute break just to catch up, that'd be great.
You know what? Thank you for bringing that up. Why don't we do that now? And we'll start off then with economic development. Is that okay with everyone?
Sounds great.
Okay.
What time?
It's 12:06. Let's get back. Is 10 minutes okay with everyone?
Sure.
So, okay, 12:15, 9 minutes.
Thank you.
Are we ready to go?
I need 90 more seconds.
It's all, you get it.
You're on.
Yeah, looks like we're ready to go.
All right, then I'll jump into it. Good evening, or good afternoon, Mayor, members of the City Council. Eric Seha, Director for Economic Development. Today, we're going to touch on the budget items for economic development, and we wanted to mention our full-time positions being reduced with the restructuring here at City Hall and the split off of public affairs and community outreach. Economic development is much more focused now on business outreach, program and incentive development, and then also in pursuing the City Council goals for this upcoming year. In the past year, some of our department successes included launching of the Palm Desert iHub, distributing over $1 million through our Unite Palm Desert programs during COVID. We've also completed our business and brokers report, which identified some efficiencies here at City Hall that we can make changes to our municipal code. And those are, we're working with our partners in planning to remove some of that red tape for businesses that are looking to expand into the city. And you'll see a new program for that. We're also working on developing new programs, as well as selling and disposing of city and startup property. For the coming year, we have a number of goals that the City Council has set, including a big focus for the redevelopment of the mall site. We're participating in Priority 1, which is our legislative advocacy group to establish Palm Desert as the next CSU for the state of California. We're also working on a broadband master plan and exploring North Sphere planning activities. And again, we'll be disposing of additional properties here at the city. We're also trying to partner with others to identify some new economic development incentives and create a real toolbox that will help us when we pursue new economic development opportunities. We'll get the next slide.
Eric, just on that slide,
yeah.
Super quick update on the Chandi property.
They've submitted their plans into planning and building. They're still going through that process. We've extended their purchase and sales agreement to the middle of October.
Thank you.
And they're making progress. All right, next slide. Here you can see our proposed budget based off last year. It's a slight reduction based on some of the new staff that we have. And we also have some professional services that we looking to use this year as we pursue the City Council goals. And then on the right-hand side, you see some of the special funds as it relates to iHub and some of the professional services there. That's our presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Seeing no questions, we can move on to my favorite division, finance. Some of our successes for 21-22 include just trying to streamline things in the department and make sure that we're partnering with our other team members in the city so that we can help them get their work done. We've looked at changing to an electronic format on almost everything we're doing, and we're transitioning to that slowly but surely. The first one we looked at was our purchasing form. All of our approvals for purchasing are now done electronically, which has been a great program. As you guys know, we have the online budget that's now interactive. We have OpenGov procurement, which has been a huge step forward as far as electronic bidding. We have the ability to go from RFP to contract in one area. And it's basically totally user-friendly. That's what I'm told. I haven't gotten in there yet. We have a new purchasing certificate of compliance tracking system, which will be great. Previously, that had been done by staff, so it should free up some staff time as far as tracking these things. And one of the biggest things for the division is just restructuring so that we have better use of our team. We can train them efficiently and have them work more efficiently to get things done. We are using surge teams through 22-23 to help identify issues and streamline these processes. We've heard everybody about how paying bills can be cumbersome, and we are looking at that seriously and hoping to have some Band-Aids in the interim to get them working better, but also Clay will be helping us look at the ERP system to see what we need to do there. One of our biggest initiatives for 22-23 is we're going to be taking on centralizing purchasing. Obviously, in public works, we have some experts there that understand the CIP process. So we're going to leave CIP projects with them. But anything else, when you talk about purchasing, will be coming to the finance department, and we will have a new team with a buyer and a management specialist to help in that, and one of our purchasing techs to help bring that to speed. And I have a young lady coming in to help me determine, or to help us, I should say, determine the best way to roll that out to the team. We're super excited about that, though. It should create some efficiencies throughout City Hall when it comes to payments. The other thing it'll create is just economies of scales. And we're going to try bidding out things all at once rather than having different divisions with 8 different vendor lists for you guys to approve. So we're hoping that that will pull it all together and make it easier for everyone this year and moving forward. Currently, we have, I believe, 5 vacancies as of today, but we are working diligently to get all of those filled so the team is up and running and ready to go for 22-23. As far as our budgets go, the finance department is pretty much status quo. When you look at general services, we have some increases there. That includes some contingency costs and one-time fees that we're anticipating for 22-23 with regard to Westfield and the class and comp study. Our independent audit is basically the same. And then when you get to contributions, you'll see a rather, well, it doesn't look like a large increase, but that's where we move our sponsored events this year, where they came from community promotions last year. I'll have to look into what was additionally in there last year that makes it look so close. And for Mrs. Kelly's notification, that budget is where we have the council member local events budgets. So if there are no questions on this slide, we can move forward to our community sponsored events and have Heather and Vanessa elevated, please.
Good afternoon. So looking over our proposed sponsor events for our city sponsored, you'll note on here we have listed out not only the events, but we have also broken down your traditional table sponsorships. These are table sponsorships that are typically approved throughout the year. Best practices were to get them approved ahead of time, and so that council is not receiving additional requests or the city manager throughout the year. So those are noted in there. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Please note that some of these requests are based on actual applications and requests. Other numbers you will see are based on historical data from events that have happened in the past. The traditional amount that is given as either applications were submitted after the deadline to finance or are still waiting to be received.
Vanessa, I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So Fashion Week, El Paseo, and Palm Desert Food and Wine together are $300,000. And I think we had a multi-year commitment, if memory serves. But in the past, we have received a financial analysis and a financial benefits analysis that helps us determine the return on our investment. I haven't seen that for this year's event. It's probably too soon. Will we be getting that?
Yes, you will. They anticipate that being by the end of the month that those numbers should be ready and we'll be presenting to council.
Okay, and then this is the 22-23 recommendation. Is that the final year of our commitment? Do you know that off the top of your head?
The final commitment based on the contract was actually this fiscal year. I do know that there has been discussion with regards to an event being canceled due to COVID, if that played a part in that 5-year contract. So we are waiting to hear back from Palm Springs Life.
Will we have an opportunity to see the data before we approve the budget that includes this $300,000?
Yes, so these are numbers that, of course, kind of are amounts not to exceed. Council, of course, as these events start to take place, can make changes as they see fit.
So when we approve the budget, are we committing to sponsoring Fashion Week and Palm Desert Food and Wine, or is it more of a placeholder?
More of a placeholder, but we will have that presentation to you before this budget is finalized. So if council wanted to finalize it at that last June meeting, we would be all set.
Okay, and just so I'm not misinterpreted, I suspect that the results will be very, very positive, but I'll feel better seeing them first. So thank you.
Welcome.
On that note, I was going to ask something that ties right into that about the multi-year obligations we have, any multi-year contracts. Do we have others aside from Fashion Week and Food and Wine?
For city-sponsored events, and we do not. For city-produced events, we did with the fireworks display. That one was, of course, canceled in 2020 as well.
And my question was going to be, how are we going to deal with that, in that we made a contract and then due to COVID, then we were not able to effectuate the contract. So will we be extending it out, or how are we going to deal with it? But I suppose we'll have that discussion when we see the analytics from those events.
Okay, Mayor, I had a question. Yes, so I'm not sure if Vanessa, you'll comment on this, or maybe our city manager. The golf cart parade, I believe, is probably going to need some tweaking on the budget, depending on how much the city of Palm Desert wants to get involved with the golf cart parade. I think we're probably going to need more discussion on it at some point in time, and it might be after the budget.
Councilmember Nastani, please, and my apologies because the notes aren't in there. The chamber did request $15,000 in monetary, and then they also did request the in-kind donation of street closures and police services.
Okay.
So that amount's not noted in that on the sheet that you're seeing.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, Gina, if I understand where you're going,
yes,
we've always got the ability to come back and revisit the funding, the approach, once our information gets a little bit better about where they're going.
Sorry,
thank you. Thank you.
Sorry. One other question on this slide. In the past, the city has been the primary sponsor for the YMCA YB Fit event. I don't see it here. Is that because they're not requesting any longer, or?
They are no longer hosting YB Fit.
Got it. It's too bad. That was over 2,000 kids doing that color run. But
yes, they've now moved into Gather at the Gardens that you'll see noted on that spreadsheet there.
Is that the concert in the gardens, or is that a different event?
That's a different event. It's held in the fall.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you haven't been training too hard for YB Fit, Mayor Pro Tem.
Just the kids' color run. I can handle that.
So if there are no other questions, I'm actually going to go back up to the budget really quickly. I realized that I skipped right through contributions.
I found it.
Okay, good. In addition to the council member and local events, what's in contributions is our outside agency funding. Those items will go before the subcommittee. I believe it's on May 31st or 30th coming up, and we will come back after that with a recommendation to council. So if there are no other questions on this, we can move forward. I believe this is our last budget to go through today. These are other by category. It includes city attorney, legal special services, insurance, and then the interfund transfers out and unemployment insurance. We delineated the items that make up the transfers out. You can see there the fire fund shortage for 4.6 million, the aquatic center shortage we're anticipating at 1.8 million, and then a few others that we're anticipating that are similar to prior years. I'm happy to go through this one in any depth if you'd like, or we can move on.
Quick question. My memory is, and I'm sure you'll correct me if it's wrong, that roughly speaking, we aim for this transfer to cover about 40% of the aquatic center's expense. Are we roughly hitting our target in terms of the percentage of aquatic center expense that's covered by revenue?
Let me just pull that really quickly and I can give you. So we are anticipating total expenditures at the aquatic facility to be 2.6 million in 22-23. I'm not sure if that's not 40%. Just by math in my head, that's about a little more than 50%, or right at 50%.
Which is not surprising, really, as the facility ages. And I bring this up because it's another talking point relevant to how our recreational benefits compare to those in the Indian wells. If we are subsidizing the aquatic center at roughly 50%, that's a huge recreational amenity, both for our residents and for our neighbors. They pay a different admissions charge, which recognizes their status, but that's a huge recreational amenity, which is substantially, and I would say appropriately subsidized, since in a desert, it's sort of baseline that everyone should have access to some form of water recreation. And of course, we make sure in Palm Desert that it's not just some form, it's a superb form.
One other question on this slide, Veronica, do you know what, I believe that the contract with Best and Krieger expires this coming year. Do you know when?
I believe they're on the fiscal year, but I will have to look into that, to be honest. I think in my brain, I'm looking at Richards Watson's agreement. So let me look into that for you.
If you can, and the reason is that if we are going to go through an RFP process, I want to make sure that we address that question sooner, and rather than later, and give us and staff enough time to do that before the contract expires. Thank you.
And Luis corrected me on my non-calculator math on the aquatic facility. It's more like 70% this year. One of the things you'll see when it comes to any type of repair and maintenance in the general fund budget this year is just an increased cost in materials and labor. And I'm sure that has some effect on their budget, but also some one-time investments that we're anticipating for the aquatic facility. And they'll get into that part tomorrow.
Thank you. I do recall some of that from minutes of the Parks and Rec Commission, but thank you.
So Veronica, are you saying we're going to get into some detail on the aquatic center?
We are, yes.
Okay, then I'll hold. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions, I think that takes care of our meeting today. We will see you all back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Some of the follow-up items I have is the transfer in breakout, the development services breakout for the North Sphere as far as what has been built, what's under construction and entitlements, the update of the Desert Willow format, and the BB&K expiration date. Is there anything else that you guys want to see?
Really good meeting. Thank you.
Yep.
To
Thank
you and
you.
to all the staff.
So much. Yes, they've all done a great job.
Fantastic information. And love the accomplishments, initiatives, successes, and initiatives format, which was implemented last year. It's a really concise way of giving us the big picture.
Bye, everybody.
We'll see you tomorrow at 10.
Veronica, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.